What's up guys, Asian here again with another build video. This time we're going to be going over tanking on the Warden. This is a part 2 of our tanking guide, specifically for Wardens. In this video we're just going to be going over skills, attribute points, CP point distribution, basically non-gear related things. If you want to go over what gear a tank should be using, especially for a Warden, you can check out part 1 of tanking. It does say Dragonite tanking part 1, but a lot of the sets that we cover in that video can also be used for Warden. So you can check that out by clicking on the eye icon up in the upper right hand corner of the screen. So without further ado, let's go ahead and start off with our Warden tank. So for Wardens, we're going to put all of our points into health, much like with Dragonite tanks. Wardens in particular benefit from higher health because some of their healing passives are based off percentage-based health instead of a flat amount. So the higher your health, the more healing you'd be able to do with those specific abilities. So we can see here we have almost 42k health. I am running Plague Doctor and Alkosh for this particular build. We aren't running Eben at all. We are using infused prismatic enchants on our large armor pieces, as well as prismatic enchants on our Nirnhoned shields. So we get a little bit more extra resources and sacrifice a little bit of health that way. But you can use health enchants if you want to get more health out of your build, or you can stick with prismatic for those extra resources. For magical regen, we're sitting at 970 with the Aetronax Mundus Stone. You are going to be a vampire, so I am not a vampire here, or I am one, but I'm not quite at stage 2 yet. So you will get 10% extra regen for being a vampire there. Going over our CP point distribution really quick, there are going to be a couple of differences here compared to Dragonite tanks, because you do not actually have access to a shield, a damage shield, as a Warden tank. So our distribution points for our red CPs are going to be a little bit different compared to a Dragonite tank. But other than that, everything pretty much stays the same. 64 in Arcana, 64 into Tenacity, 23 into Warlord, 23 into Tumbling, and 56 into Shadow Ward. For our blue CPs, 100 into Blessed, 66 into Elfborn, 31 into Master at Arms. That's really just for the riposte extra passive node. 31 to Precise Strikes, and 2 into Piercing. And this is where our CPs are going to differ from our Dragonite tank. Like I said earlier, Wardens do not have access to a damage shield ability, so there's really no point in putting points into Bastion, so we're going to shift a lot of points now into Ironclad and Thick-Skinned instead. 61 into Ironclad, 1 into Spell Shield. You can put that into Heavy Armor Focus as well if you'd like. And then 56 in Thick-Skinned, Hardy, and Elemental Defender. And again, that's because there's no point in putting any points into Bastion if we don't have any damage shields. So talking about skills now, we're going to go over our bars here. So for our front bar here, we have Pierce Armor, the one-hand shield taunt, Heroic Slash. We have Gripping Shards. This does do damage based on your max health, but we're not really concerned about the damage aspect. We're more concerned about the immobilization aspect. When you cast it, it immobilizes enemies for 3 seconds. So this is kind of the Warden version of Choking Talons for the Dragonite. This is going to be more useful for trash pulls. Bosses are obviously going to be immune to the immobilization effect, as well as the more elite mobs. Those with the fancier health bars are going to be immune to that. So this is more going to be for dungeons and a couple of trash pulls in the Craglorn trials, more so than some of the DLC trials. Polar Wind, this is going to be our primary heal. As you can see here, it heals for 11%, as well as an additional ally for 11%, so you're healing somebody else for about 4,200 health. So that's obviously going to be very useful. It heals 20% health, so that's going to be, or not 20%, an extra 10% health. That's extra 2% health every 2 seconds for 10 seconds, so you get 2% health every 2 seconds. So it's not going to be quite as big of a burst heal compared to Green Dragon Blood, but that extra heal over time is going to be very beneficial to you. So this is kind of the Warden equivalent of Green Dragon Blood on a Dragonite. We got Absorb Magic for the blocking reductions. Then we have Eternal Guardian. Obviously you're not going to be using this. This is going to be more for the Flourish passive, which gives us 12% extra Magicka and Stamina regen when we have an Animal Companion ability slotted. For our back bar here, we have the Range Taunt, Inner Rage. We have Ice Fortress. You can go with the other morph, which is Expansive Frost Cloak. It's just cheaper and hits more allies around you, 28 meters as opposed to 8 meters. But Ice Fortress gives you that minor protection, which helps buff you up a little bit more for your survivability, which is always nice. But Expansive Frost Cloak is an option to use as well, especially if you're not going to see yourself being the main tank and instead off-tanking more often. We have Leeching Vines. This is going to be more for the minor lifesteal, but this is a flex spot here. Green Lotus, you're going to want to try to light weave and heavy weave as a tank, so you might as well take advantage of it by using Green Lotus. We also, using Green Lotus, will proc Nature's Gift, which restores Magicka or Stamina, whichever pool is currently lowest, every 1 second. So that's why we're going to be using Green Lotus. You can also use Lotus Blossom if you'd like. It's really up to you. I like Green Lotus better. There's really no difference either way, because your crits percentage is already low enough as it is as a tank, so it doesn't really matter which one you get. Then we have Bullnetch, which restores stamina over time. It also gives us Major Brutality and Major Sorcery, but we don't really care about those buffs as a tank. Then of course we have Aggressive Warhorn. Now for our flex spots here, Gripping Shards here is going to be our flex spot. For dungeons, this is a very nice ability to have. But for trials where you have a lot of mobs that are going to be immune to the immobilization, Gripping Shards loses its utility value. So you have a couple of options here for in place of Gripping Shards. You can go with Subterranean Assault. The strength of Subterranean Assault is that it is an AoE move that applies Major Breach and Major Fracture. So you can apply this to a bunch of different trash mobs. Just basically, you don't have to go around puncturing each and every one of them. You can just cast Subterranean Assault, hit all of them, and they all have the Major Breach and Major Fracture. That being said, there is limited usability for this. You're going to again be using this more for trash pulls, much like Gripping Shards. So it's really up to you how you want to do it. I find that Subterranean Assault is very useful when you're an off tank on a vet trial or trials compared to main tanking things. You can also just swap it out for Gripping Shards whenever you need it, whenever you're done with the boss fight and you know you're going to be pulling with trash. You go with Subterranean Assault if you have a second tank in their trial that can use Talons or Gripping Shards. Other potential flex spots, you can go with Shimmering Shield. This basically is the Warden version of Dragonfire Scale or Reflective Plate on a Dragon Knight, in that it will help mitigate damage completely from any projectile, whether that's magic or an arrow, but it also gives you major heroism. I believe Wardens are the only class in ESO that have access to major heroism. So this is very, very powerful for ultimate regen, so definitely consider using this if you're going up against any sort of range adds or adds that you know that have a projectile. There are a couple of bosses and a couple of moves that Shimmering Shield does actually protect you against. For example, Mighty Chudan's Spit move, Shimmering Shield will be consumed by that, so you can avoid getting hit by that Spit move by using Shimmering Shield that way. You can use Frozen Device. This is the Warden version of Chains. So you basically point it on the ground, it lays a very large portal. Show you guys what it looks like right here. And you can cast 3 of these, and it'll just port any enemy that is within your portal directly to you and apply minor maim to them. So this is kind of a combination of chains and choking talons. It is definitely more difficult to use compared to chains because you have to kind of aim it. It's indiscriminate, so you can't necessarily target a specific ad necessarily. If there's a group of ads, it'll just pull a random one to you. So there is some weaknesses and downsides of using Frozen Device, especially when compared to Dragon Knight Chains. On to other potential flex spots. You can use Invigorating Drain more for an off-tank thing for the added regen bonus. Ring of Preservation or Turn Undead. This is going to be more for stack and burn fights in certain strategies and trials. For example, VHoF Last Boss, there is a strat that uses Ring of Preservation during the execute phase, so that is kind of where you would use that. You can use Balance as well, basically trade off some health to get some Magicka back. A lot of Warden skills use Magicka much more than compared to Dragon Knights, and Wardens have worse sustain, so it is worth considering using Balance to help sustain yourself. But do keep in mind you are giving up health, so you're going to have to trust your healer because you do have that healing penalty for 4 seconds after you use Balance. Then you have energy orbs as well. This is more to feed your healers extra resources because they can't pop their own orbs, obviously. You won't actually be doing a lot of healing with this, but it's just very nice to have that option there for you. You can stick with Echoing Vigor as a area heal. It helps heal your allies up. Go with Purge if you need Purge in certain fights. For example, VHoF, you're going to be using Purge a lot. Asylum, you're going to be using Purge, so it's always nice to have that option to put it in there. And then you have Stalwart Guard. You can help guard your DPS, reduce the damage that they take, and give the minor force at the same time. If you do use Stalwart Guard, though, you will have to double bar it, so in place of this flex spot, you also have a flex spot here with Leeching Vines that you can put Stalwart Guard with. And you can use Blood Altar instead to get the minor lifesteal. However, there is a very long cast time associated with it, so it's not exactly the best option for as a source of minor lifesteal, but it is an option. Now Wardens do have the advantage of being able to use War Machine or Master Architect for Major Slayer. Alternatively, you can use Inventor's Guard or Automated Defense for Major Aegis whenever you use an ultimate. So certain Warden builds, this is more for 4-man content, less so for vet trials, will actually have their Warden tank be wearing War Machine or Master Architect. Usually it's War Machine for the extra stamina. And then they use Enchanted Force, which is a 90 cost ultimate. So it's really cheap to use. You get 20 ultimate back if you heal somebody under 50% health with the initial heal, really making it into 70 ultimate, 70 cost ultimate. And it procs, it gives your 2 closest people Major Slayer. So that's obviously going to be very useful for your DPS. Only problem is you're going to have to be kind of aware of your positioning, and you're going to have to tell your healer to stay away from you to make sure that your DPS are the one getting the Major Slayer boost instead of your healer. So there have been instances where I've used a War Machine build, and I've used my Forest, and the healer is too close and ends up getting the Major Slayer as opposed to the other DPS. So that is an option. You can replace Aggressive Horn over here with Enchanted Forest if you're going to use War Machine. But again, that's more for 4-man content and less for vet trials. In vet trials, Aggressive War Horn is going to give you much more bang for your buck compared to War Machine and Enchanted Forest. Other things to keep in mind for Warden healers, we're obviously going to be continuing to use Tri-Stat food, max health, max magicka, and max stamina. This doesn't change between Wardens and Dragon Knight tanks. So let's tripods. We're still going to be using tripods on a Warden tank. No real difference there at all. So one thing to keep in mind for Warden tanks is that you have worse sustain overall compared to Dragon Knights. That's because you don't have access to Battle Roar or Helping Hands. Nature's Gift is kind of mitigates your sustain problems a little bit, but it's not particularly reliable because it only restores your lowest resource pool, which more often than not is going to end up being your magicka, which is not the greatest thing in the world. Wardens don't really have a source of converting magicka to stamina that Dragon Knights have. But beyond that, Warden tanks do have some pretty good group utility with the group buffs they provide. They do have very good healing abilities as an off heal, so that you can heal tank content, 4-man content on a Warden tank. But ultimately, Wardens don't really fit and don't have the same amount of survivability or sustain that Dragon Knights have to main tank vet trial content. You're going to see Wardens more fit into the role of a off tank as a tank. But again, don't let that discourage you from playing Warden tanks. They can be very fun. I particularly enjoy Warden tanking. It's a bit of a change of pace compared to Dragon Knight tanks. So I particularly enjoy Warden tanking, but if you're used to Dragon Knight tanking, it's going to take a little bit of adjusting to, just because it is a different playstyle, and you do have to kind of play around with sustain and kind of do a little bit of resource management, a lot more resource management as a Warden. So there is a little bit of a learning curve there. But that covers it for part 2 of our Warden tanking guide. I do have a Warden tank on live. She's currently spec'd out to be a Magicka Warden DPS, but I will respec her back to a tank, so you can get a part 3 of kind of see the difference between a Warden and a Dragon Knight tank and see how to tank as a Warden. So be on the lookout for that. That's going to come out probably not very soon, but hopefully sometime within the next couple of days or a week or so. So that's it for this video. Hope this helps. I'll see you guys in the next dungeon.